In preparation for this video, I had to do something completely horrible and vile. I had to... I don't even want to say it. Watch one of my old videos. See, when I came to play DreadOut 2, I thought, yeah, this one can't go under the radar and needs to be talked about in a rant video. However, the thought also occurred to me that, hey, didn't I make a rant video on the first game? I seem to remember something like that happening. Well, call me a plant, growing in reverse, cause I'm going back to my roots. I did make a rant video on the first game. Ordinarily, I won't watch any of my previous videos the second I've uploaded them because I've had to watch each one at least 12 times in a row whilst video editing, but I thought it'd be good to refresh my mind on what I originally thought of DreadOut 1 and see if my opinion had changed on it since then. Well, I'm happy to report that the answer is no. I'm still sticking by what I said 4 years ago. Jesus Christ, 4 years ago. The point being is that I have mostly fond memories of the first game and was quite impressed by it considering that it was an indie title, and while it wasn't without its flaws, I was looking forward to the DLC that was in development and possibly a sequel where the devs would get the chance to improve on their formula and take things up a notch. Well, I played the DLC first and quite frankly I wasn't impressed much, thank you very kindly. It kind of felt as if the devs had some extra maps lying around and a really irritating boss fight in mind and just wanted to show those off. So there's your rant on Keepers of the Dark or whatever it's called, but let's move on to the point of this video, shall we? And look, I think we've just set a new record for how quickly True Review can get to the point in one of his videos. So, DreadOut 2 came out not too long ago, and I have to say, I was really hyped for this game. I may have even squealed a little bit when I found out. But only a little bit. Why? Because it's been ages since I played a decent horror game, what with me playing literally nothing but RimWorld and Stellaris for ages. I was starting to get a bit starved of being made to change my pants every few minutes, and with DreadOut 1 being pretty good for that, I was looking forward to more of that shit with the sequel. So, ladies and gents, the time has come for me to say if this game is worth getting. If it's any good, if it's sufficiently scary, and if it's... No, okay, no it's not. Suffice to say, I was very, very disappointed with DreadOut 2. Bad game. You should feel ashamed of yourself. Now go to your room! And that's a kicker too, because all signs initially were pointing to this game being good. The demo was pretty good, though once again not without its flaws, but the horror still seemed to be there as we'd hoped it would have been. The layout of the game and formula were as we remember, as in being trapped in an Indonesian high school at night with booze floating about, and your only method of fighting them is to take pictures of them and post them on Instagram. It was almost, and I'll get into more detail on why it was almost and not completely later on, great stuff all round with this part. Well, this was the prologue as well as the demo, and coincidentally, all of that gets removed from the game once you get past this section. The rest of the game is a great pile of boring that someone has set on fire. Alright then, the story first. So it turns out that after the first game, Linda managed to escape whatever hell it was she got stuck in, but only her because her classmates and teacher are now either dead, possessed, or in quarantine due to COVID or some shit because they're not in the game anymore, only really being shown in a small memorial in one of the classrooms, so I think we're supposed to presume that they're all dead. Linda has gone back to school and then stuff happens. Cool, that didn't take too long to explain the story. Fine, I'll put a bit more effort into it. After witnessing some ghosts and finding out she's brought back whatever it was that happened during the last game or whatever, she can now see dead people. Linda finds out that she's continuously crossing over to the other side, leading to her not being sure if this is genuine or if she's going crazy. And this takes up quite a big part of the game. You go to school, some shit happens. You go home to your dorm, some shit happens. You go to your doctors because you think you might be going crazy, some shit happens. This is a good 1/3 of the game, mind you. Eventually you conclude that you're not going crazy, instead you go off in search of answers. And equipped to fight off the ghosts once more is your trusty Samsung S Galaxy. No, wait, what? You don't take pictures of ghosts anymore? Oh. So, now what do you use then? Melee weapons? Are you fucking kidding me? So no longer are we doing the fatal frame thing by rewarding the player by being scared in the form of causing more damage to the enemy, no, we're just hitting them now with whatever we find lying around. Now, that's not to say that the camera is gone, it's still there and you can use the flash feature on it to stun enemies, and I wonder why Linda's battery hasn't depleted yet, because mine certainly would have done by now, but the emphasis is now on beating your enemies with weapons until they die, which I'd argue detracts from the joy and horror of the original title. The one thing that DreadOut 1 got right, and the devs got rid of it. I guess making things shit is what defines progress these days. Eventually, Linda comes across a mystic who offers to help her out by doing literally fuck all, and you end up going to see someone you're close with who knew your family. But then it turns out that this person is actually a demon of some kind, that your mother and father were powerful mages or something, and their powers have passed on to you. Then you get an unnecessary flashback to when you were a kid playing hide and seek and you befriend a monster who wants to eat you. Then you go home only to find out that it's on fire and your parents are dead. Hang on, why is it only now, at this point of the game, that we're getting any kind of backstory for Linda here? This part takes place near the end of the game, and it's only now that we're seeing Linda in a different light other than generic high school girl. Yeah, plot twist, she has powers, y'all. Well, the ghosts in the first game and this one seem to be really interested in Linda, so that doesn't exactly come as a surprise, but whatever. This all culminates in a final battle where you return to the town at the start of the game and go through what can only be described as a scene stolen from Clive Barker's Jericho, and then fight a boss at the end of it, which is where I stopped playing the game due to the terrible combat mechanics. So now I'm going to talk about the terrible combat mechanics. So earlier on, I hinted that the prologue had some issues that stopped it from being great. Two issues I had with it was the horror itself, which I'll get to later on because I want to talk about this game's horror in bulk, but the second point is the new combat system. So right at the end of the prologue, you've got a boss fight against a ghost. This ghost is super fast and will hurt you if you're not quick enough. Your weapon here is your camera, which is good, and this isn't exactly the only time fans of this series have had to do this, since that was literally the point of combat in the first game and the DLC. The problem with this fight is that you can only hurt your enemy while it's close enough to you, but this guy moves so quickly that by the time you've laid eyes on him, he's dashed all the way across the room and hit you. You can't use the old horror fight method of backing up into a corner so you can see the whole room, because this guy is dead and can go through walls. Ultimately, what this fight boils down to is a battle of attrition. It's who can get the most hits in first and not die. Okay, that sounds like every fight, but this game gives me a great chance to introduce a poor gaming design feature that I've seen in loads of other games. I call this one the hit tax. By that I mean, during any sort of fight in-game, whether it be a boss fight or against a regular enemy, in order to damage your opponent, you also have to get hit yourself. Ever encountered an enemy that can break through all of your defences, yet rolling or dodging doesn't work and you still get hit? Well, that's the hit tax. You want to cause some damage to your foe? You've got to pay the hit tax and give up some of your health too. The last boss in the prologue in DreadOut 2 is a good example of this. By the time you've actually managed to cause damage to him, he's also caused damage to you, and even in the off chance that you do manage to get the hit in first, your attacks don't stun him. In other words, you're taking damage whether you like it or not, and honestly, this is a goddamn awful game design, and I wish games would stop that shit. Unfortunately, since this fight happens so near the start of the game, it gives the player the impression that this is pretty much how fights are going to be from now on, and you're mostly right if you think that. An enemy has pinned you up against a wall, and every time they attack you, you get stunned. But the second you've recovered from that stun, the enemy attacks you again, stunning you once more and not giving you the chance to get out of there. If this ever happens to you, here's how to get out of this. Just pause the game and reload your last save because you're dead either way. And then there's the end of the game, or penultimate boss battle. I'm not sure since I didn't actually finish the game, though I knew I was close. So you come up against this huge eyeball-like enemy, and the way to defeat it is to run up to it and use the flash feature on your phone. The challenge here is that while you're doing this, the enemy is charging up a powerful attack that, if I recall correctly, will one-shot you if you don't use the flash mechanic on it quick enough. In addition to this, there are infinitely spawning enemies in the room who, if they knock you down, is a game over for you because the second you get up, they'll just knock you back down again. And finally, the real kicker here is that on top of all of this, there are tentacle spikes hanging from the ceiling, and if you go near one, it will stab you through the chest, locking you in place long enough for the infinitely spawning enemies to rush you. And these spikes are fucking everywhere on this map. You can't go walking 3 steps without one of them off screen reaching over to you and stabbing you. And this is why I said, f*** it, and I stopped playing. It wasn't entirely because of this fight, mind you, I just wanted an excuse not to play it anymore, since I thought that this was that bad, but a boss fight that was not designed to be challenging, but designed to make the player lose repeatedly, was a good enough excuse for me to stop playing. Now, that's not to say the first game was a flawless work of art, of course it wasn't, but at least the combat worked. In the first game, it took the style of the Fatal Frame games where you do more damage to your enemy the closer you let them get to you. This was a great way of combining horror into combat, and it actively encouraged the player to get scared. Whereas the combat in the sequel is a slow, clunky mess that often at times seems to be designed at the player's disadvantage, rather than making you feel vulnerable yet keeping it fair. If enemies are going to pin you up into a corner and keep hitting us until we're dead, then why not just have every enemy insta-kill us the second they land a hit? It's the same thing, just that last one's quicker. Okay, so what about the horror itself? I remember saying that DreadOut 1 understood how to do good horror, and since this is by the same people, DreadOut 2's horror should be cut from the same cloth, right? No. See, that's where you've gone wrong. You seem to think that just because the first one had some good jump scares and atmos, then the second one should too. It doesn't, and I think I know where this game has gone wrong. It's suffering from sequel syndrome, another term that I've literally just pulled out my arse. When making a good sequel, a development team should both understand and respect what made the original great, and then use that to brave new grounds and try new stuff. However, there is a limit to this. If you don't go far enough with the original content, then congratulations! You've made a dull copy of the first game and it's not going to be received very well. However, if you go too far with upgrades and improvements, then you end up focusing on new features too much to the point where you almost completely forget what made the first game so good. DreadOut 2 falls into this latter category. The first game was at its best when you were walking through dark and eerie corridors where spooky things jump out at you. Apart from the prologue, DreadOut 2 wants to show off its big open maps with fuck all to do in them. Hey, player! I know you really want to get back to ghost sightings, but check this out real quick. We designed some ducks, and a river too! Yeah, that's great digital happiness, but I'm gonna head to the next level. No wait, before you go, have you checked out the kitty by the statue yet? We programmed that, lols. The impression I got was that they were so focused on making their maps look pretty that they forgot that this was a horror game, to the point where you can go quite a while without coming across anything remotely scary, and even when you do, it often falls flat. The first time you come across a ghost is in the prologue, and it can be found down an alleyway. But upon seeing you, this ghost charges right at you, knocking you over and speeding off. Now, this sounds like it could be scary, except for the fact that all of this happens so quickly that by the time you realise that this ghost just went for you, it's already gone round the corner and disappeared. Instead of shitting yourself, you go, is that a... Well, that just happened. The first game understood how to frighten the player, when to do it, and when to let you build up that sense of false security only to then smash it down. The first game genuinely made me jump on several occasions, while my reaction to the horror in the second game made me look like Daisy Ridley doing her best attempts to act a part. Like, there were some parts that I think were supposed to be both scary and creepy, but just kind of left me confused over what was going on. Like, for instance, there's this one side quest you can do which ends with the very first ghost you meet giving you a bike ride around the countryside and you both have a lovely little chat. Then there's this part where you go to a hotel because you're looking for something, and at the end of it, there's like this end-of-level boss fight against these gremlin-like things. Honestly, the whole section with them was just silly, and it was hard to tell if the devs were going for creepy or comical, which is fine, because it didn't come across as either of those things. The entire thing just felt so out of place that I forgot I was playing a horror game, let alone a DreadOut game. If they wanted to make that fight more comical, they should have gone like full retard with it. Could you imagine this shit with some heavy metal thrown in over the top? But do you want to know the saddest thing about what I just said? I wasn't even joking! That clip I played for you was from the boss fight, and it was completely unedited! You fight a gremlin that's rolling around in a hotel while heavy metal blares out! You walk into the fight thinking, okay, this game is bad so far, but I'm holding out hopes they will get better. And then you walk back out like, nope, I have now seen everything this game has to offer. There are a couple of good scare moments though. That part where you go to the doctor's and have to wait in his office, and you can see what looks like a ghost girl out of the window through the door over Linda's shoulder, and then she suddenly appears in the room with you. Now that was good. But I can't think of any other parts where I was like, oh damn, that is some good horror. I did like the part during the prologue where one of your classmates gets possessed and then streams herself online telling everyone how she's going to kill Linda, and you can only watch it if you hold your phone up to your face. I thought that was a really inventive way of adding in optional cutscenes into the game, and was looking forward to seeing more of that. Shame that was the only time this ever happened in DreadOut 2. Well done on a missed opportunity, Digital Happiness. Also, what the fuck was going on with voice acting? Characters couldn't make up their minds if they wanted to speak in Indonesian or in English. I'm fine with this being subtitled if that's what you want. Plenty of it is, but it's kind of weird and inconsistent when you get subtitles for ages, only then to meet another Indonesian character who has a flawless American accent. There were also a few side quests in this game which was kind of weird and unexpected, but okay, where you have to do small tasks and whatnot. There's one which is quite big and acts like a ghost hunting treasure hunt. This girl wants you to take pictures of weird stuff and she'll reward you for doing all of it. The reward, when you finally turn this quest in near the end of the game, is... drumroll please... a small and pointless cutscene. You know what, I think that sums up this game in a nutshell. The devs want you to go on this side quest, but don't really know where it was leading either, so they gave you a reward that was about as half-assed as their attempts to make it seem worthwhile. Cheers guys! In conclusion, DreadOut 2 is a terrible game and I cannot recommend you buy this one. I'm not even going to recommend the DLC for the first game either. DreadOut 2 missed its own point for the majority of the game because it wanted to show off stuff that the dev team had been working on, rather than improving on the experience they gave you in the first game. If you really must get into this series, then just get the first game and stay there. It's definitely not perfect, and it has some awful beginner's traps and plenty of flaws, but it's also entertaining if you like horror. DreadOut 2, however, only offers a small sliver of what made the first game enjoyable, but would rather waste your time or offer you a subpar experience, and it's a shame to see this happen to a potentially great game. In essence, this game has sold itself out, and no one, and I mean no one, likes a sellout. Which leads me neatly onto the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends! Forget everything you think you know about mobile games, so that we can set the bar to the ocean floor with this one. Raid Shadow Legends